Hello, my name is Sara Scoggan, and I'm an early childhood educator at the Newburgh and Large City School District. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to connect with you in this video. I hope to work in a Chesterton school because, just to be honest, it makes me so excited. Having the little ones around me is the best part of my day. I live my purpose by bringing them joy, keeping them safe, seeing their wonder, and leading them into learning. The whole world is just fresh and new to them. The years of the ages 3 to 5 are special to me in particular because that's when things are really opening up in their minds. I want to be a part of laying the strongest of foundations for their future life and learning, and also it just makes me really happy to be around them. I think the curriculum that I've seen and read about at Chesterton schools strikes just that right balance in pre-K and kindergarten, the balance between being developmentally appropriate for young children but also being rich in nature. The ancients knew that little ones aren't ready for the logic and rhetoric stages, but that doesn't mean they need to wait to do any meaningful learning. It expects excellence. It doesn't demand the impossible. I think I see that in the preschool and kindergarten students learning so much, but in playful, joyful ways. I'm fulfilled when working with children and stories, whether it's the small story of the little red hen or the true story of Israel walking dry-shod through the sea. Stories just tell us so much about the truth. I think if you read enough with children and really read across the subjects, that's where it just works beautifully. Art tells a story. Math tells a story. When you use great books to teach, it really sticks because it engages you. Students don't have a chance to be bored. The stories inspire kindergartners to learn to read themselves. They hear all these great stories and they really want to be able to learn to read so they can read them for themselves. But in the meantime, they can understand way more than they can decode. So I have here The Little House, her story, written and illustrated by Virginia Lee Burton. And I consider this to be what I've heard called a living book. It really brings story to life. And if I were using this in the classroom, I would read it through the first time just to enjoy it as a story, but then I'd go back and read it again and we can see so much more in the story. Once upon a time there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold for gold or silver, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren living in her." And then a few pages later, we hear about the spring. Time passed quickly for the little house as she watched the countryside slowly change with the seasons. In the spring, when the days grew longer and the sun warmer, she waited for the first robin to return from the south. She watched the grass turn green. She watched the buds on the trees swell and the apple trees burst into blossom. She watched the children playing in the brook. So we could talk about what we see in the picture, all those things it mentioned. We could talk about the seasons. We could talk about winning the Caldecott Award for great pictures, great illustrations. When it talked about the little house and time passing, you can see the moon waxing and waning here in this calendar. There's some actual constellations in the sky we could talk about. So living books just have so much to unpack in them, and they also are just really engaging stories. Also, you are never too young for great poetry. So I have here Favorite Poems, Old and New, selected by Helen Ferris. Robert Louis Stevenson is always a favorite poet. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can say. He is very, very like me from the heels up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into the bed. So using poetry every day to get accustomed to and appreciate the sound of beautiful language. In preschool and kindergarten, a lot of learning happens organically, so I like to teach a lot with hands-on toys or manipulatives. So I have here a shaker egg and a scarf. So if I were talking about AABB patterns, instead of just saying what they are, they could see and hear it in a song. The song's called Cobbler, Cobbler. Cobbler, cobbler, mend my shoe. Have it done by 2:30. Tula, tula, ra. Tula, tula, ra. 2:30 is much too late. have it done by 8:30. Tula, tula, ra. Tula, tula, ra. So they can hear and physically do the AABB pattern with the shakers and the scarves. We could also sing a phonics alphabet song instead of just the regular alphabet song. Or if students were playing with blocks and they made a ramp, make a toy car go down a ramp, I could say, I wonder what would happen if you made the tower taller, to lead them to ask questions, sort of make their own hypotheses of what could happen. And that kind of thinking about it deeper, I think, is part of lifelong learning. And I know there's that step up between pre-K and kindergarten in terms of the complexity of what they're learning. In these early years, that's when students should be led into the habit of attention. Nature writer John Burroughs said, "We open another eye whenever we see beyond the first general features or outlines of things." So, for example, I have this picture I got from a conference on classical learning, and it's a frog and it's got a butterfly on its head. And so if we had this picture, we could just say it's a frog and a butterfly, or we could look deeper. We could ask, how do we know it's a frog? How do we know it's not a toad? Maybe we read frog and toad yesterday and we're connecting it. We could talk about the symmetry of the reflection. We could say a butterfly is an insect. We could just ask questions of where do frogs live in the world? How far can they jump? We could ask a lot of questions that, using this picture as a jumping off point. So teach them to look deeper than just it's a frog. I think that if you spread what we say the feast of ideas for students, you engage their minds in the beginning and they can understand a lot more than I think people give them credit for. They get a little glimpse of that vista of learning that's coming up ahead. In conclusion, I just want to reiterate that working for a Chesterton school would be my ideal career. And thank you so much for your time and attention in watching, and I hope to speak with you soon.